Alright folks, hi, I'm Garrett. This is a long-awaited video here. I know the last few days on my channel on Facebook. Fly. Psst, we're gonna put that in the bloopers. Alright. Anyhow, I'm Garrett from Tech. Yeah, this has been a much-awaited video actually. It was this how to make an Ethernet cable video. I know I've posted quite a few times on the Facebook page about making this video. So first and foremost, I'm going to have links in the description for this stuff on Amazon, eBay, as well as even your local Lowe's. Lowe's or Menards or somewhere like that, you're going to pay a little bit more of a premium for your Ethernet cable, but at the end of the day, still you'll have it in hand, and it's far less to pay for it this way than it is to pay for it with the ends already on it. It's a considerable amount more expensive when you compare the price for an already made cable versus voila. All right, that'll get cut. All right, anyhow, a pre-made cable versus the cost of doing it yourself once you've factored everything in is a no-brainer, especially if you're wanting to add Ethernet to a garage like what I have here, or a house of some kind, or anything like that. So I already have some footage shot of what exactly the method I use. I usually shoot for the 568B standard. I'll put a few things up on the screen for you guys to see. When Ethernet was first coming around, good old, I think RG6 was RG4 maybe, I don't know. One of the coaxial cables was actually what they used for 10 base T originally. So Ethernet and old school token rings and Apple network and all that stuff, that's going like way back into the years of networking. But anyhow, back then, they used, just like you would see on like a closed circuit television camera nowadays, so even though a lot of those are now going Ethernet, is they had, the bridge naval connector on the back, and you would run coaxial, through your building for your networking. So when Ethernet first came around, you had these dumb devices called hubs. Now, a hub really didn't do anything except for rebroadcast the signal, but it rebroadcasted the signal out to every machine. So usually when you were uplinking to a hub or something like that, you would have to do what was called a crossover cable, because the device, you would have to make sure that the send signal from the computer or machine that you were sending from went to the input receiver of the machine you were plugging it into. So that's why devices now with gigabit Ethernet are smart enough to do that on their own. So you can just plug, Ethernet cable from your computer into your Xbox. You can do that now. Whereas in the past, you could hook a cable up to it all day and until you were blue in the face, and it wouldn't light up or do anything. And that's just for the simple fact that you had to have a crossover cable. And if you didn't know what that was, then that's basically where you had the A standard on one side and then the B standard on the other. And so basically what that does is it crossed the send and receive pins. And then if you wanted to console into a machine from an Ethernet to a serial line or something similar, you had to have what was called a rollover cable. And I'll explain this in the video, because there's a standard to the way that we're going to put the wires. Now, most commonly, if you're making an Ethernet cable nowadays, you're going to follow a very specific pattern. It's going to be orange, white, orange, green, white, blue. All right. Anyhow, you'll follow a specific pattern. It's usually orange, white, orange, green, white, blue, blue, white, green, brown, white, brown. And that's your 8 pairs. I'll list them here on the screen. And then you'll want to make sure that you are also putting on the connector. I'll have a link for these in the description as well. These are some of my favorite ones to use, these platinum connectors. I find them on Amazon. It's overkill usually for most of what I'm going to be doing, but I like to overkill. I like to overspec things. I'm a tech enthusiast at heart, so I figure why the heck not, right? So I like these. They're shielded connectors, and then they're also wire through connectors. And now you can get a special crimp tool for these that'll allow you to cut the wires as well as crimp the connector at the same time. I personally like it because the wires come all the way through, and I can make sure that the pairings are right as it comes through the connector here. This fly is really getting on my freaking nerves. Hold on. All right. I went and got the fly swatter. Anyways, so these pass-through connectors are really, really nice because you can see your pairings, you can make sure they're right. And then try to get up on this as best I can here. There's this little nubby piece at the end here. I'm going to try to focus it in, but I don't think we're going to get it. Anyhow, there's this, or this little flicky thing. It's a little flicky. See it? So at the end here, there's this little butt. And there's just enough space. See that? There's a little ledge here. I'll put a little arrow here for you. So on that ledge there, there's enough plastic where you can get leverage on this, and you can use a utility knife right here and then basically wedge the wires, and then there's something to butt up against there. And most utility knives, even if they're somewhat dull, are sharp enough to where it just serrates them all off. It makes it look real nice, real professional, nice, pristine and clean for those people out there doing this kind of work for a living. And then even if you're not, man, you should not want to do this sloppily. A bad connection can lead to problems for your network. It could lead to too much noise. Most of the time, if you're going to be making these cables at home yourself, you're usually not going to be following that up with a $2,000 networking tester, and that's just because that's outrageous price to pay for a tester if you don't do that kind of thing for a living. So you might be working with, a network cable tester for a few $100s or even less than $100. That's basically just going to let you know that you got the cabling right. And that's only if you manage to do the pairing correctly on both ends of the cable, because most of them aren't made now for you to do the crossing and everything like that. It's just checking to make sure that all 8 wires on this side match all 8 wires on this side, because in theory, as long as you've done that much, your Ethernet cable is going to work for you. All right, so you got your cable here, and this is going to be one of the most important things to remember. Whether you're doing a lot of keystone jacks now, we'll have a little piece, like a little booty piece that's supposed to help keep the cable, central, and also help keep, your punch downs inside of the keystone. But we'll get into keystones later. Right now, today, we're focusing on just making the Ethernet cable, because most of what the general user is going to do is hooking their stuff in the house up into a switch, or even nowadays it's easy enough to find a coupler or even keystone jacks that are now couplers, so that way the end user doesn't really have to worry about punching anything down with a punch tool. So you have your Ethernet cable. You have the length of it here. This is probably 5 feet maybe. So you have your Ethernet cable here. You know what size you want it to be. You've got it all set up and ready to go. Do not forget to do this. I still forget to do this, and it bugs the ever-living jerking crap out of me, because I'll usually get to the point where I've already got everything lined up real nice, and it's all in there, and it's ready to go, and then I realize I forgot to put the booty on. Now, some people don't care about the booty. I personally like it because it keeps the dust and stuff off the cable. And people are like, Garrett, you're already using shielded connectors. And I'm like, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, do the most, man. So don't be like me and then have to re-straighten your wires out after you've already got your ducks in a row, and then put this on. Remember to, now before you're ready to cut the wire, is put the booty on. You want to put the booty on now while the wire's still in the shielding, and that's because it's just so much easier to deal with. So once you have it on, you want to bring it down about yay far. You really only need to score a little bit. You do want it to be longer than what is actually necessary. Anyhow, links in the description. A lot of these tools have this razor blade built into them. You'll be able to see that. I know it's not exactly in focus, but there's a razor blade in there. And then there's this little cutout here. Now you bring the cable, pull it all the way up to snip the cable off, or you can just use a cut tool if you have one of those. I prefer to use that once I've gotten into straightening my wires out. I just use a pair of cable snips. And then for scoring, that's where you use this little hole in your punch tool here. Some cable guys you'll see will have a little tool in their pocket just for scoring, where they put it on and they twist it around. It's the same concept here. I'm going to try to avoid putting a shadow on the background here, so it's the same kind of concept. You're going to put it yay far down, you're going to put it in the hole. You want to kind of lock it in. Don't really need a lot of pressure. Just want to barely kind of guide it on there. So all right. So now that we have that, it should just come whoopity whoop. So now you have this. And this can seem like a lot to people at first because you have 8 wires in here. There's 8 conductors, and then there's also usually this little guy here in the middle, which some of my pairs have already untwisted yet, which that's an unfortunate side effect sometimes from these cheaper cables. The pairs don't seem to be twisted nearly as well as you'd want them to, but you're using this at home, and these are nice thick wires. So this is actually Cat 6. So as the years have gone on, the thickness of the actual conductor has gotten more and more. So with Cat 6, they're a little heftier than they are with like Cat 5 or Cat 5e. And then I imagine with Cat 7, they're even worse. And then you'll probably see cables on Amazon or whatever that claim to be Cat 9 cables, but or whatever, Cat 8, or it doesn't really matter. None of those are really certified yet, even if they meet what they think the spec will be at that particular time. It's usually just mostly a marketing gimmick to get you to buy whatever it is. So don't buy any Cat 6 or 7 cables, 7 or 8, you know what I mean, because it's usually just a gimmick. Usually the conductors in those are just as every bit as thin in as 5A, or you know what I mean, like you really gotta trust the manufacturer, and when they've already put the ends of it on, you can't really determine unless you cut the cable open to see what the integrity of it is. So anyhow, you want to separate these out. I usually separate them out into quadrants, kind of like a little flower, and then you want to snip this guy down to size, so that way you can straighten out your cables here. Alright, so we have him here. We're just going to kind of pull him up and out the way, get a cut tool in there. Now you'll know if you have some really cheap jankety cable, because you will go to strip this, you will score it, you'll pull it off, you'll take the little divider guy out in the middle and you can just stretch and boop. And then so if you ever get cables like that, you have to make sure the integrity of those, especially if you plan on pulling them on big reels up through ceilings and up through walls. And so you have to think, if you're going to be putting, you know, strain on those cables, if the core in the middle is just going to fall apart on you, then chances are you're going to be stretching those cables in there, and at the end of the day, they're not going to test good, and your whole run is going to be garbage. So don't do that. Make sure that if you are going to be making cables, that you at least make sure that the materials are what you want them to be. And the core just disintegrating when you pull on it, it's not what you want. So anyhow, now that you have this, you have the core cut out, you're going to start lining these guys up. I'm going to try to cut to a shot of me doing that now. I'm going to move the camera around. I have some shots of actually, you know, making the cable, but I want to make sure that I kind of get the technique across in the camera. The technique, I like to do I like to wiggle them, kind of heat them up a little bit in between my fingers, and I kind of wiggle them back and forth, and I pinch them with this hand, and I get them lined up in the correct order. And then once I have them where I want them, I use the cut tool to cut them all straight. And then what we'll do is we'll feed them through the connector. And then once that's done, I have a few shots of each, but we're going to try to get some more shots of that now. So let me go ahead and switch the camera shot over here. Alright, now I got a little bit more of a down angle shot here. I'm going to try to catch a better glimpse of me doing this. So, as I mentioned previously, we're going to start with a very specific pattern. Does anybody recall what it is? Let's put it on the screen one more time for everybody there at home. It's going to be orange, white, orange, green, white, blue, blue, white, green, brown, white, brown. So, let's start doing that. So, our first pair is orange, white, and orange. You'll also be able to tell if you get cheap cables, because it'll be hard to tell the whites from each other. But anyhow, I like to take them once I have them in the correct order and kind of just pinch them a little bit like this, give them a wiggle, and kind of pull them up to kind of knead them a little bit, and it kind of get them, together a little straight. We'll see. So we have orange, white, orange. I want blue, white. Blue, white, and green. Now for A, you would just flip this, obviously. You would have orange, white, orange, green, white, blue, blue, white, green. But I might have to back up the truck there and reiterate that myself, because I definitely did that wrong. So here we have it in the right order. We have orange, white, orange, green, white, blue, blue, white, green, brown, white, brown. Now see, I'm giving it these little pinches and everything, and I have them basically here now. I have them straight. Now they're a little uneven, so that's where usually this comes in at. I like to take them. I'm going to take my cut tool. I'm going to take it down about halfway, and I'm going to do it across straight. We're going to get rid of all of those. So now we are left with these nice straight things in order here. So we have our orange, white, orange, green, white, blue, blue, white, green, and brown, white, and brown. So now you have your little connector here. I like to face this little guy away from me, so that way I'm looking at the connections. On the bottom you can see the copper and everything. I want this facing towards me with the flicky thing on the bottom. So we're going to feed this on right here like this. It has went in there. So now we can get it to go in here. And now that we have it pushed all the way in there, we have the plastic up there. See how the wires now come through, but now we can check our pairs. So we're going to check orange, white, orange, green, white, blue, blue, white, green, and brown, white, and brown. Everything is in the correct order. So now what we're going to do is we're going to feed that into our punch tool here. If you have one that does both phone line and networking line, you definitely want to make sure you pick the wider of the two. And that's going to go right into our tool here. And I like to give it a second one just for good measure, but this one is nice and tight. So now that we have that on there, it has been crimped down. Now we just need to get rid of these extras here. And that's where what I explained with the box tool. There's enough leverage there where I can get this down. I should be able to shear these off. Give me just a second. And like a glove, we have her done. So we're going to flip this around here. We're going to pull it up. We're going to put our little booty on here. And voila. We have 1/2 of an Ethernet cable. So now all you really need to do is follow that yourself. I always have extra networking line. If somebody knows me personally, you can leave me a comment. You can hit me up on the Facebook page. It's www.facebook.com/TechYaLLC. Yeah, this is a technique you want to practice. I usually always have scrap cable and scrap ends. But anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and do this other side, and we'll get right back to that. Alright, while I wrap up the other half of this cable, I guess I wanted to take it out to a point. I did mention that there are 2 different standards for doing this. If you look online, you'll see, you know, there's T568A or T568B. What I've shown here on this video is basically the T568B method, and that's just the method that I remember the most easiest, and that's just because it's stuck into my head after all these years. 568A or B, you know, as long as the cable is the same on both sides, and today's day and age, it generally doesn't really matter too much, unless, like I said before, you're actually planning on doing any punch downs where you're going to be adding any networking lines or jacks to your house, or using a patch panel or anything like that. But I will have videos on that, because I do want to put in a small patch panel probably out here in the garage, and that's just because I'm going to have my project sitting out here, so I would like at least an easy way to plug into the network. But that I need to figure out if I'm going to run one of these bad boys all the way to the house from here or not. So it's not, I don't really want to bury a cable in my yard. I don't own this house, so, but just running on an Ethernet cable to the house might not be as far-fetched as it sounds, though, because I can keep it up off the ground using the fence or something. I don't know yet, so we'll see where that project goes with time. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and finish up this cable. Thanks for watching the video, guys, and I'll have more like this, and this thing will evolve. So if there's a tech related thing, especially anything networking related, especially, you know, even if you're using, which I dread, if you're using the ISP's wireless router and can't figure out how to set your network name, even things like that. But we're going to go over that probably here in the next video, and that's setting up, you know, a nice Wi-Fi system. I'm personally going to use DDWRT, which is a flashed operating system for your router, but there's a lot of people out there interested in that, and they're interested in OpenWRT and Tomato router and stuff like that. So we're going to get into some home networking stuff. That way we can show you guys how to hook up your home networking cameras. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching.